Good morning, class. It is June the 8th, and we are going to talk about family today. So I want somebody to think of a family that they think was very successful. Somebody you know, either at church or you just had in your personal life. It could be your own family, it could be anybody's family. And just tell us about that family. Somebody just pick a family. Come on, this is not that hard of a question, and you can't be wrong. Lynn, go ahead. Tell us about a family that's been successful you know of.
I'm working on it. I'm thinking.
Depends on what you call successful. I mean, if you're talking about materialistic things, so we don't know what people have.
No, just you pick your own definition. Just describe some family that you know that did well.
Well, I have a cousin, and they, from all appearances, they've done well in a lot of different ways. They're all their kids have grown up and are part of a church, and he's done real good in his family business.
Okay.
And he's in the air conditioning business, and he distributes more American Standard stuff than anybody in the world, I guess. Of course, they live in Houston, so
Okay.
it's kind of an easy market for that. But anyway, they've been really interesting. Their kids, real good kids, and
How many kids did they have, Rod?
they had 3 boys, and they've got, I think 9 grandchildren now.
Okay.
And 2 of the boys stayed in the business. And the third one became an optometrist, and he's got, 5 or 6 different offices in the Houston area. They live in Sugar Land. But one thing kind of interesting is that now the boys are starting to think about retiring. The 2 boys that are in the business, and their dad's idea, and this is a common idea in a situation like that, was for this just to be passed on from generation to generation, and everybody be interested in this, and none of the grandchildren have any interest in it whatsoever. One of them works in it, but it's just a job, and it's I suspect this last time we were down there, sounds like the boys are beginning to think about selling. So
He built the business himself. He
Yeah.
started from scratch.
Good.
Really.
Somebody else tell us about a family.
Okay, I'm gonna tell about my older sister.
Okay.
Who, when I think of my family, I have to think of her. Her husband is a preacher. They go to one of those more conservative branches of the Church of Christ, I'll say. But he was sought after all the time to preach. He's a wonderful preacher. They had 2 children and a son and a daughter. Their son is also a preacher. He has 3 children. They're all Christians. And they have a daughter who's Lynn's twin. And she's also a librarian, and she's never married, and she's beautiful, and she's devoted to her parents, just like Lynn. And all of my family, that sister and her families are in my mind, I guess, because they have done whatever it is, they've done it right, and they're all Christians. And so that sticks in my mind.
So let's take it back a generation or two. So you have two sisters, I think.
Yes, I do. Uh-huh.
So when you were growing up, was the idea that at some point all three girls would leave the family and go start their own lives,
Oh, absolutely. We
Right,
girls could
so-
hardly wait to leave.
right? The girls could hardly wait, but the parents probably could hardly wait too. So,
Yeah.
so
Right,
that was, let's say, age 18 to 20 when you go off. And it's assumed that you're going to go start your own life and you're going to be, you're going to control your own life. Right? Then your sister, let's say, and probably the other two of you get married and you start your own family. We even say that, don't we? We start your own family.
yes,
And that same idea holds true. You guys raise your kids to go off and be independent. And that's a
Right.
sign of successful parenting in America, right? Is that you raise your kids to be independent. They go off and make their own life, right?
right,
And you consider that to be success. It's an ultra success if they end up being Christians, if the parents are Christians, if they end up being Christian, that they hold the same values as the parents.
yeah.
That's one of the things we like, is when the kids have the same values as the parents. Okay, did anybody notice the email I sent out this morning? Did you read it about being weird?
Yes,
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
I thought of so many people.
uh-huh. Well, you may have noticed that weird was capitalized all the way through. The reason for that is that's an acronym, and it stands for your Western, educated, industrialized, you're rich, and you're democratic.
Hmm.
That those are the makeup of people who live in America. That we all have those same things in common, no matter what spectrum on the scale you are in compared to the rest of the world. All of us are rich, and all of us are well educated compared to most of the rest of the world. And so we make up that thought process makes up about 15% of the world. It's a very small amount of people in the world that have those characteristics. Along with that characteristic, we have certain things in our culture like family. We just all described how most of us view successful families is that the children end up being independent, go off and lead their own lives. Maybe you get married and have kids, maybe you don't. But either way, you're still going to be your independent self. Some of us take care of our parents better than others. But even when you, like Lynn, taking care of her parents, she's still a very much independent entity from her parents. And everybody recognizes that, always has. What if it was different from that? And the reason I ask that question is, if that's our concept of a family, then everything in the Bible that has to do with family, that's how we think of it. That's our initial perception. Is family in the Bible. When we say, I'm part of the family of God, when we sing that song or we talk about that, our concept of that family is very much what we just talked about. Is that we go to a church where people are independent from one another. We gather every once in a while, just like a big family reunion, and we do whatever we do, and then we go live our own separate lives. Right. And that's good. We all want that. And we all want to help each other, just like we do our family members. But we don't truly rely on one another in our families or anything else. It's very, when we say I can count on my sister, yeah, you kind of can count on her. You can call her. If you need $50, you can probably get $50. But she's not going to sell her house for you, more than likely. You'd have a very unusual sister if she did that. So our concept of the things in the Bible about that, about family, had to do with how we envision families here in America. For instance, how do you join a family in America?
You're married.
That's one way. You can join a family by being married,
Adoption.
adoption.
Born into it.
There you go. Very good. The most obvious one. You're born into your family, right? What if that had a different connotation than we give it? Let's think about Jesus talking to Nicodemus at night. And what does he tell Nicodemus?
You must be born again. You must be born again.
You must be born again. What was he telling Nicodemus? We're always taught that he was telling Nicodemus to go get baptized. What if that was only part of that story? What if he was telling Nicodemus, you're part of the Israelite nation. Your family is the Israelites. You're in the family of Abraham, right? We always talk about they were all sons of Abraham. What if Jesus was telling Nicodemus, you've got to be part of a different family? When you're going to be born again, you need to be a different family. And that family would be people that followed Jesus. That it was a very, very obvious thing to people who think differently than we do about family. So how do people in other parts of the world think about family? And I don't know how many of you traveled in Asia or Middle East or something. If you haven't, you really can hardly have this concept, but unless you've studied a lot. It has, and the reason I'm going to go here is because the Bible was written to these people. And when the Bible talks about family, it's talking about family the way that people in the Middle East still think about family. I was just over there a few years ago, got to be with some really wonderful people, the Arabs. They still are allowed to have multiple wives if they can afford it. One of the guys I was talking to had just married his second wife and was looking forward to getting his third. And all of the younger people are looking at him like, why would you want multiple wives? Because they've been influenced by Hollywood. But decades ago, it's very, very likely you would have multiple wives if you were in some of the countries in the Middle East. They almost all lived with their family. They almost all had a grandfather and or grandmother that lived there, parents, their family, and then their kids. They were almost all of them lived in 4-generation houses. And the ruler of it was the grandparent, not the parent. They led very, very family-oriented lives. They made decisions as a family. They arranged marriages still. Everything about their life was measured in terms of family. They worried about disgracing the family. They worried about the honor of the family. When they talked about their ancestors, they were talking about, in some cases, hundreds of years old. What happened to them 200 years ago was very important to them. Most of our kids don't even know when World War II happened within 50 years, right? For our kids to be upset at the Japanese or Germans is just, there's not even a hint, right? That didn't happen to their family because their family is only their mom and dad. So I think what happens a lot is our concept of family very much determines how we read the Bible, and we don't read it. And I'm throwing this out as a challenge because Sunday I'm going to go into this in a lot more detail. I hope you can be there to talk about it. The book of Judges and all the books we've been reading about, I think we've missed a lot because we didn't think about family the way they think about family. We think about family the way we do. For instance, and I'll give you one for instance that is, I think we miss a lot. Like Abraham was a man of faith, right? Why was he a man of faith? What did he do to start with? What was the very first thing God told him to do? Leave his family and go and travel, right? What did that mean to him? That was his whole support structure. He worshiped the same gods they did. We find that out in Joshua. We've talked about when God told him to leave his family. In fact, let's turn to that real quick because this is a much more fundamental scripture than we ever talk about. So let's go to, I think it's I didn't look this up ahead of time. I think it's in Genesis 11. No, not going to be 11. It's 12. We're going to start at the beginning of Abram's family in Genesis 11:27. Okay. So when he talks about Abram's family, he starts with the account of his father. This is the account of Terah's family line. Terah became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran became the father of Lot. While his father Terah was still alive, Haran died in Ur of the Chaldees, in the land of his birth. Abraham and Nahor both married. The name of Abram's wife was Sarah, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. She was the daughter of Haran, the father of both Milcah and Iscah. And we learned elsewhere that Sarah and Abraham were also related, blood related. They weren't just married. Now, Sarah was childless because she was not able to conceive. Now, what was the main purpose of marriage back then?
Reproduction.
Several main purposes. One of them was to have children, right? So the author here is letting us know that the gods of Abraham are not very powerful because they are not able to help her conceive. They are not able to help Abraham and Sarah extend their family. So we don't read that here, but that's what's between the lines, because their gods they're worshiping are not powerful. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of his son Abram, and together they set out from Ur the Chaldees to go to Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. Terah lived 205 years, and he died in Haran. So you can see there, this is the grandfather, Terah, who's in charge of the family, and they're all doing what he said. Then the Lord said to Abraham, the Lord had said to Abraham before, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. He's asking Abraham to give up everything, to walk away, not just his wealth, but his family, his whole support structure, all his cousins, his uncles, and everything. And look what he says in verse 2. I will make you into a great nation and I will bless you. In other words, I will give you children. If you do this, I will give you children. I will make your name great. You will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. So Abraham went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. He was 75 years old when he set out. So when he's setting out, he's trusting a God to provide him a family. That's a big part. He's going to replace his old family and give him a new family. And so he took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out from there to the land of Canaan. Verse 7, the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring I will give this land. So I built an altar there to the Lord who appeared to him. So he continues to trust that God will provide him a family, and so on. We sometimes miss the importance of that picture, that the family, how much Abraham gave up to leave and go, and what he was trusting God to do. And he trusts God for, it said that he was 75. So for the next 25 years, he's following a God. He doesn't know God's name. And all he knows is God keeps telling him he's going to have children. And that's why that's one of the reasons why Abraham was a man of faith. He was trusting God for 25 years until he gets to be 100 years old. Gives up his old family. That's the importance of family to them. That's how important it was. When Sarah later gives her handmaiden, that's a very smart thing for her to do. It's important to everybody else because what's going to happen if Abraham does not have an heir? It's all going to go to Lot. Lot's going to be the new head of the household. It's important for the whole family that Abraham has an heir. And Sarah takes it into her account. She was very doing what was best for the family, even though it wasn't necessarily best for her. So that's one example. Another example I thought was interesting that sets us up is when Moses was called from the burning bush. And let's see if we can find that here real quick. I don't remember the chapter exactly. Moses, so that'd be Exodus. When did it be? Exodus 2, maybe 3, something like that. So Exodus 3 is where Moses gets called to the burning bush. And then 4, he's still talking to the Lord. So I'm going to go to Exodus 4:17, where God tells him after the end of the burning bush, but take this staff in your hand so you can perform the signs with it. Let's see what happens in verse 18. Then Moses went back to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, let me return to my own people in Egypt to see if any of them are still alive. Jethro said, go, and I wish you well. Who's the head of the family? Jethro. Moses is literally asking his permission to go back and do what God promised him. It's a very clear setup of what that family looks like. So how would we be different? Not only how would we interpret the Bible, but how would our concept of what Jesus is talking about change if we had a whole different idea of family? Paul's idea of adoption, being adopted children. We think of that, I'll be adopted into a family like my family here in America. That's maybe not what God's calling us to. Maybe it's a different type of family. And we just can't see it because we're used to American families. Anyway, I'm going to go into this in detail on Sunday, but I want y'all to be thinking about it during the week this week. What's your concept of family, and how does that relate to the Bible? Because there's a lot of stuff in the Bible about family and our concept of all sorts of things. I think it's maybe just a little off because of that. So anyway, anybody have any comments or thoughts? Did I just go completely off the reservation today?
Are you going to explain? Are you going to answer that question
Which one?
about what we think about family? Are you going to
Yep.
give us a better answer than what we think?
Yep. Oh, I'll give you
On
a different.
Sunday.
I will talk more about what that families look like back then and the obligations. Yeah, obligations and responsibility.
Okay.
And we'll talk about things like Acts 2 or 3 when they had all things in common. Have you ever noticed how that's just kind of a thrown in sentence?
Yeah.
It's like we take that as being, whoa, that's crazy. The author just kind of mentions that in passing because of course that's what you would do if you were part of a new family. That when they came together as Christians, they were a new family and they were behaving like the families they were used to, which is they shared things in common.
That would be hard for us to do now, wouldn't it?
It's horribly hard because we don't see family the same way. We see
We're all
family.
individual.
We see family like, oh, I'm an individual person. right?
Yeah.
We're very individual, and we interpret everything through that lens. Yeah, we'll go through some scriptures that are very interesting, and as we finish Judges and go into the Kings and Prophets, I'll point out a lot of different things that where family is being talked about, reconciliation. We think about reconciliation as a individual concept. Almost all the way through the Bible, it is about reconciliation of the community, not individuals. Even the story of Joseph, I was reading last night about the story of Joseph. The whole story of Joseph is about Joseph being kicked out of the family because he was a bad guy. And then eventually everybody's reconciled as a family. That's the success. It's a reconciliation story of the family of Joseph. But I've never heard it taught that way. But when you think about it, Joseph was not being a good family member to start with. And his brothers are worried about it because, but we'll get into this more when we get to the story of Joseph. When Jacob gave Joseph his coat of many colors, he was saying, Joseph, you are now going to be my firstborn. Because Joseph was a firstborn. And he was going to be the new leader of the family. But he was the firstborn of who?
Rebecca. Is that Rebecca?
No,
No.
Leah or Rachel, one of the two.
Rachel. He was the firstborn of Rachel.
Yeah, the other boys were the firstborn of the other one.
Yeah.
So the whole inheritance of the family is all dependent on who is the firstborn and which one Jacob decides is the firstborn. So when he gave Joseph that coat of many colors, it threw everything into total chaos. And then Joseph, being not a very nice guy, said, oh yeah, you all are going to be bowed down to. He's not behaving very well as a family.
Now it's
But-
funny how you look at that differently than I do. You look at it like he was being arrogant toward his brothers and kind of hateful, where to me I was looking at it like he was just a kid and just telling him his dream. I mean, it's funny how people look at things differently.
Right.
It's just a
Did he need-
story, and yet
It was huge because he was clearly saying, I'm going to lead this family. And all of you are going to be dependent on me because of the way we don't think about all the family members being dependent on the firstborn. We miss that whole part of the story. He's basically saying, okay, I'm going to run this family and you guys are going to be dependent on me. And I'm a real jerk because you can tell because I'm lording this over you. And I don't have to work. You guys have to go out in the field and work. I don't have to go work. I'm daddy's favorite. He's a
you think
spoiled
that's
brat.
what he did. Oh, oh, okay.
So Phil,
Yep.
do you think that the large degree to which we identify individuals and families as being dysfunctional is related to how short-sighted we are about the depth of family and how our families are not organized and governed by someone older, like a grandparent that's at least a generation older than our parents?
I think it's part of it, but I think it's also we want our children to be grown up and independent and leave.
Mhm.
And so we want our children to see themselves as individual entities instead of part of a family. And so we get what we want. And we're trying to force things on these poor teenage kids. They can't even sleep at night because their hormones are running so fast. and we want them to go out and make great decisions, there's no chance in the world. Where if we were not trying to push them out of the house, but to say, we want you are going to be part of this family for the rest of your life. So you need to see how to function as part of this family.
Mm.
It'd be a whole different set of pressures and measurements. Now, I'm not saying it always works, because obviously the Arabs have just as many family problems as we do, but it'd be a different set of problems. Yeah. There's a lot to this. We'll get into it in a lot more detail about what it means. But what's interesting to me of this anything is we have this whole set of thought processes and assumptions that we never think about. We don't even know we have them because they're so normal to us, and everybody around us thinks the same way we do. But if you go to many other places in the world, they just look at you like you're crazy. Like if you said, man, I'm going to go away to college and be on my own, they'd look at you and say, I'm so sorry. I hate that for you. We're here in America, we're like, yeah, go girl. So we just we're different, and we're different in a way that's really never happened before in the history of mankind until the last 100 or 200 years.
Do you think one reason is because our country here in the United States is so big, spread out? Those countries, I mean, I know China's huge, but most of those Eastern countries are little.
Yeah, it has to do with being able to move around a lot. And now with internet communication, all the other countries are having this, all their kids want to be like us. So it's really
Yeah.
tearing up. It's tearing up a bunch of societies in the world. The kids are going, I want to leave home. And the parents go, you can't leave home. You're part of the family. So it's, yeah, the whole world they're trying to be like us, and it's going to cause them some significant problems. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I happen to like the way we are in America, but I do recognize that I have a very unusual viewpoint because I'm weird. Certainly not the viewpoint in the Bible.
That's interesting, Phil. That's interesting.
Well, I'll give you a whole bunch of, I'm doing some notes to share with everybody for Sunday. So be ready to put on your thinking caps. All right. Love you guys very much. Go have a wonderful day, and we'll
You too.
chat later. All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right,
Bye-bye.
thank you.